Hello, everyone. Today is February 24th, 2021. This is the Kubernetes Data Protection Working Group meeting. So today, let's see. Oh, I just got pinged by Xiangqian saying he's coming. Okay. Let's just get started anyway. Today, first, we will do a design review for the Working Group cap. And then we will do a quick update of the data protection white paper. And yeah, after that, it's open issues. Xiangqian, have you joined yet? Okay, all right. All right, I think we just get started.
Yeah, I joined, but
Okay.
there's something wrong with my Zoom.
Oh,
Sorry, guys.
It's okay. So, okay, so I just, since today, the main topic today is to do a review of the voting group cap. Yeah, so we can just start with the, Xiangqian, do you have anything else you want to go over before we start reviewing the cap?
No, it's good. Go ahead, please.
All right, sure. Okay, so I think we actually reviewed this a few times already. I believe we reviewed this in this working group meeting before, and also we had several separate meetings to review it. So, I have updated the cap, made some updates. So since it has been a while, so probably I don't have to go over the whole thing, but maybe just to go over the main proposal again. So this cap is to, in this cap, we propose to have a few new CRDs so that we can actually create a group of multiple volumes. And then we want to be able to take a group snapshot or consistent group snapshot from that. And we talked about like multiple ways of creating this group. And so I think there are several different revisions of that. So let me just go over what we have here in the latest cap. Let's see. So we have several ways to create a volume group. So I think there at one point we talked about like mutable, immutable, and then we decided that it's getting too complicated. So right now we only support mutable voting groups, if a driver has that capability, of course. So so one way is that we can first create an empty voting group, and then we can create a PVC, providing an existing voting group name. And as a result, that PVC will be added to the group. And then in the voting group, we also have a status that shows what PVCs are added to the voting group. For this, there is one capability, which is the CSI capability, voting group capability. So CSI driver will have to support that capability to be able to support this way.
Can you take a volume out of a group once it's in?
No, that's a different one. You mean remove the one that's like the modify, right? So that's the next.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah,
oh,
yeah. So yeah, I think it's because there are several ways, right? So so the first way is just I'm just talking about the first way is that you just create a voting group first, and then you add a new volume to that group. And then the second one is to modify, because not every driver can support a modify. That's why this is separate. So we actually need a separate capability in the CSI driver. So we call it voting group add remove existing voting capability. So if a CSI driver can support that, then we can do it this way. We can create a new empty voting group, and then we can add an existing PVC to this existing volume group. And then in this case, of course, the volume group actually, it can be non-empty as well. So basically we can just add existing PVCs to it. And this also allows you to remove a PVC from a volume group without deleting it.
Can I add a PVC to 2 different groups?
So yeah, so that's actually something that we are actually talking about. We want to support. I know that we haven't really going through saying how the controller handle that, but right now, because we are talking about, you can, one PVC actually can support different types of groups, right? So that would be supported. I don't think we actually really talked about the details of how to implement that, but right now at least it's supported.
So what you're saying is, in principle, yes, you could add a volume to multiple groups, but it might fail for.
Yeah, for some other reasons. So I think we probably should also look at it, because I think the reason we support that is not for you to have like same type of groups. It's really because we were initially talking about, we also want to use this group for some placement reasons, right? So in that case, you would need to have this volume in multiple groups if we want to use that for different purpose. But then it's also, if we support that, probably also does not make sense for us to say you cannot belong to different volume group of the same type. I think implementation might be complicated. I don't think we have really talked about the details of how to handle that. But right now, at least it's supported. Maybe we can.
Would groups have explicit types then?
So right now in this current cap, we're talking about, the group would support a group snapshot or a consistent group snapshot, right? But we also talked about, there was one, I think that's one part of the the use cases, right, for the placement. But that's kind of at the end of this, because it's just getting too complicated to talk about everything at the same time. So we separated this cap now. So the placement part is at the end. We have never get to that yet, because we're still talking about this group snapshot part.
What's the rationale for wanting a volume in 2 separate groups?
Oh, so that is if you are also using that for the placement, right? So then you may want to do that. So for the placement, you want to make sure it meets those type of requirements. So that's the only reason.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering though, on maybe the original question, if there was because having a volume in 2 separate consistency groups is icky.
So it's, we can probably, I think that's something that we can discuss, because I think initially we're saying, okay, it could belong to different groups. That's because we also want to have this one for placement purpose. Then that might be a different group. But then it could be that definitely that's error prone, right? So you have to actually make all these changes.
Yeah, I think the intention here is that you have lots of different types of groups that we will create, and it's possible that the purpose of the group may be different, and therefore you may require a volume to belong to 2 different sets. Ultimately, it will always be up to the storage system to decide if that makes sense. So user can always say, oh, I want to put this volume in such and such group. The storage system has the ultimate decision on whether that's possible or not, and can reject it.
Yeah. I mean, I can get the 2 kinds of groups. The problem is then if you're an orchestration system, sort of finding out from the storage group makes it really hard to define policies. If you had different types of groups, I worry less. It was more the again, I have a volume in 3 different groups, 3 different consistency groups. It's really rough, right? Because then if I trigger restore, do I get weird dependencies? And so I wasn't sure. I think, Ben, you were the one that originally asked the question. Was there a use case in your mind when you asked it?
For which question?
Can a volume be part of multiple groups?
No, just that, like, that. I guess the way I look at this feature is like, is this something that I will ever be able to implement or not? And if
got it.
And if not, and there's a lot of deal breakers. So like if a certain thing is a requirement, then it's like, okay, I can't implement that. It's not useful. And I don't, but I mean, my deeper fear is that like everybody looks at that way, and everyone has a different set of deal breakers, and it makes it impossible to invent something that would be useful to any reasonably large fraction of the people who might be wanting to implement the feature.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, like it'll be, you have to have like the ability to put a volume into one group, right? And my guess is that most storage systems are not going to allow a single volume to belong to multiple groups of the same type. And then beyond that, you know, it'll probably vary from storage system to storage system.
Should we actually limit this?
I'd say no. I'd say let the storage systems decide.
Okay.
Yeah, there's always going to be a tug of war between what's better for the end user versus what vendors will be able to implement. And the more you pull one way, the more you're going to lose on the other side.
Okay, I'll just add this. Okay, so so this one is actually a little trickier. Right? So basically, I think this is some feedback we got in one of the previous meetings, because we want to be able to do this modification more efficiently. So we talked about that. Even though in Kubernetes API, you will have to go modify one PVC spec to add the volume group name there. But in our controller, we're going to implement the logic. So we actually will have like a desired state of word and actual state of word. So we will actually compare that in the controller, and then try to do this like I don't know if you should call that a batch operation. But basically, we want to be able to call this one CSI function, modify volume group, and then that actually we will pass in the the PVCs that we want to add or remove in that group, just in one call. So this way it'll be more efficient. So this is a change that we made. Now, one question that I'm actually not quite sure is, if we have this modified volume group to handle multiples, is it still necessary to have a modified volume? Because that was originally there, but now I think that's probably not needed. But I like to ask, storage vendors who actually supports this, is it still necessary to have a modified volume CSI function? Is modified volume group, if we support this one, should this be sufficient? I mean, based on what we have done this previously, seems to be sufficient, but I want to see if folks have different requirements for this one. Do we actually have to call both CSI at this time? Like both, do we have to have both a modified volume group CSI function, also a modified volume CSI function? Do we need to call them both in this case? Or just one modified volume group is enough? I mean, maybe I'll just add this here if folks need to think about it. And then of course the volume group controller will be updating the group status with whatever PVCs are updated or removed. They should have the updated PVC list there. And then delete, if delete is the same thing actually. If we want to delete that, it's basically still you are removing, you're also modifying the PVC spec to remove the volume group from that PVC, so that will trigger, it's have the same effect as the add actually. This is the controller will be handling them together. Okay, so that's that. And then I think in the last meeting, we talked about that we also want to support create a volume group from a volume group snapshot. Because initially we were thinking, okay, we don't want to support that, but then we thought maybe if we don't support that, it's probably it's not going to be useful for some storage system at all. So we decided to support that. So in this case, you can actually just have this one call that allow you to create a volume group from an existing group snapshot. And then also the PVCs will be created in this one call. So, and then of course.
Xin, sorry, I got a question. That's actually related to the modify case. Let's say a existing PVC, a user decides wants to add this PVC into a volume group, right? This will trigger the external provisioner to kind of modify the volume, right?
That's this one. That's this one, right? Talking about this one now.
Right, right.
Okay.
What if it fails? How will
it
the
fails, and actually it's
like?
Yeah. So actually, if it fails, then that actually should just it's like a partial success, right? So it's if you're, I think it should still continue. But that's something that we can discuss. Like, should we continue? So let me add this one here. Those are something that we should discuss in, that's the control logic. If we fail to add one PVC, should we fail or continue? But I think we should continue. Actually, in this case, I think it's so since this is like one call, right? This is basically we are having this modify volume group RPC call to the driver. So I think this is, maybe we can leave it to the driver to decide, because this is we send this request to the driver saying add.
But
right?
there's also a modify volume call, right?
No, that's what this is part. Yeah, so this is part that I'm asking is, do we actually need it? If we actually need the modified volume, then of course we need to handle. Okay, maybe I should add this one. Yeah, so the volume is okay, right? So I actually think it's not needed. So unless if someone's saying, tell me that we really need that, I was suggesting to remove that. I was actually looking at this one last night. I was like, I probably should remove this. I don't think it's needed. Unless some sort of vendor saying, oh, you absolutely have to make two. It's a little weird. Maybe like underneath, they should be able to do that.
Sure.
If nobody's have any objections, I'm going to remove this. I don't think this is needed. So
yeah, if you remove this, the problem is who is going to be responsible of updating the PVC status? Is that
would be the volume group controller will be doing that.
Volume group what status you're going to just set, right? To the pod, it doesn't make sense, because I'm asking to add the PVC to the group. I'm not expecting my PVC to be broken, even though it's failed.
Not really. Oh, you're saying the no, we're not failing the volume, right? I'm just saying it's going to fail the this modify. It's going to fail this volume group thing, but it's not going to fail this individual volume. You can still use it. You will have some error messages there, right? You can still use it. I don't think it's not going to make the volume failed. You should still be able to use that if it's already being used, right? So okay, we should probably add that. All right, if you need to call volume, that the entire. Yeah, I think that does not really make sense, because now it's we are here, then we can't really go back to this other control, right? So it's a little weird, then make the control logic very complicated.
Yeah, the thing, this itself is pretty complex, right? Think about a newly provisioned volume case.
Yeah.
Right? You might want to fail the volume in that case.
So So
For
you, yeah, you,
existing
I think, no, so if it's individual modify volume, then yes. However, I don't think you will get some error messages, but I'm saying if it's used by the pod, that part should still be usable. I don't see why that should be changed, right? So I think that part should not be affected. Okay, so also should if one volume fails to be added, should not affect how to say, it's used by a pod, that there will be yeah. So I actually think this really should get rid of the modify volume call here. I really don't think that's necessary. But yes, it's like the controller will have to handle that, but I don't think we actually need to make a CSI call here.
Can you show what the API objects look like in volume group spec and status?
Okay, sure. Oh, I actually maybe should finish this one because otherwise you will see this other entry there. Let me finish this part.
Okay, sure, sounds good.
Yeah, so we're talking about the create volume from volume group snapshots. This is actually going to be like a source. And then, so in one of the previous meetings, we decided not to use the selector. So initially we have this selector there. Then we decided, because we were saying this one, once you use that, it cannot be mutable. But now I have a different idea, because since we are doing this anyway, so basically meaning when you create a new volume group, your group is not empty. You will have some PVCs there initially, and then you're trying to add something. So I think it's similar. So I actually now added this back. So I just want to get feedback and see if that makes sense, because I think this is actually a very important use case. If we don't have that, I'm pretty sure there are people who will keep asking for this feature because if they have like some stateful set or something, they just want to be able to put them in a group with a selector. So I added this back. So let me actually go now. Let me go to the API. Okay, so this is the volume group class. So last time we decided that we also want to have other than a volume group snapshot flag, we also want to have a consistent group snapshot flag, just to separate, saying those are different. So now there are two there. And then, so the volume group, right? So volume group spec, we have a volume group class. And then, so this is thing that I added. I just want to see if this makes sense. So now I create a init source, so that expect that this is only at init time. It can be changed. So it does not, having a selector does not affect us from being mutable. This is
quick question, please.
Mm-hmm.
Could you educate me why those volume group snapshot flags are not a CSI capability thing, but rather defined in the class?
It is a CSI. It is a CSI. So basically you request this, right? And then we'll check to see if a user can support that, right?
Sure, but why? Yeah, why it needs to be in the class?
It is in CSI. It is in CSI capability as well.
Then the class should not have it, because the driver should be able to tell you the most accurate information instead of you asking people to specify.
But if you're not asking, then how do I know what type of group you want? We're talking about, we could have different type of groups, right? So like we also talked about the placement part that we didn't really get into. That would be like a different capability. So
yeah, the intention here, Xiangqian, is that you have different types of volume groups that Kubernetes will treat differently. And so we need some way to be able to surface that all the way up to Kubernetes in a way that can be set and said, okay, we want this type of group. And ideally, each of these should be mutually exclusive. Maybe we could add validation and comments saying that.
Are they mutually exclusive?
They should be. You should pick one of these, not a combination of these, is my understanding.
Should we actually support multiples? I was initially thought we can have to, it's actually fine to have multiple different capabilities as long as the driver can support it. So like this two, of course, I think this actually should just be grouped together. I mean, maybe we should have like one another struct, put them together.
I guess what I'm afraid of is if we start allowing some weird combinations and we end up with like, 6, 7 different modes, that the user is going to end up having to like guess what the supported subset is going to be.
Okay.
And so it just simplifies things to say, okay, there's basically pick a mode. It's either this or that, and you need to create separate groups for each mode.
Okay.
If this is purely for a mod selection, does it make more sense to include this in volume group spec directly? I'm sorry, I still couldn't get my head around why this is a class level.
It needs to be at the class level because the parameters will depend on the type of mode it is.
Oh, I see, because the opaque parameters will need to be, okay. Yeah, this is not very common, right, Saad?
Yeah, this is different. It's, we're saying there are different types of the same type.
Yeah, my fundamental thing is that these flags can be obtained from CSI driver and needs to be got from there for validation.
We do have that, right? So we can also have that in the status. So if driver supports it, then you get that status back or something.
Sure, but think about who is going to operate on this object, right? It's gonna be the storage admin or cost admin. I assume this is a non-namespace, right?
This is a class. Yeah, this is in the class. So yeah, the admin basically set this up, and then user can say what type of group they want, right?
Then
so I think, Xiangqian, there's kind of two aspects of it. One is like, is a storage system capable of such a mode? And yes, that's interesting, and we should have the storage system surface that information for validation purposes. The second bit is Kubernetes being aware of what is the intention of the user. Why is the user creating this volume group? Is it going to be a volume snapshot group? Is it going to be a consistency group? Is it going to be some other type of group, like a placement group? And if so, Kubernetes itself will treat that differently, right? The volume placement groups could involve the scheduler doing something special, for example.
Okay. Then maybe it's not a bad idea to use enum instead of using booleans. Otherwise, you might end up with what you're saying. So
yeah, I think that's fine. We could have like a string type mode or something like that. But I think the only thing we need to worry about here is like backwards compatibility if we add in a new mode in the future. I think it used to be that we used enums in the past, and then the problem was if you introduce a new one, can we do so in a backwards compatible way or not? And so then I think we went towards Booleans as like, oh, you can always test for a Boolean, even if you add new Booleans in the future. It won't make any of these out of date.
Sounds good. Thanks.
So we can just say, like we just have like one type, right? The group type or something, and then it can be one of those. We can.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Okay, so and then so here, okay, we're talking about this init source. So basically, when you initialize the volume group, what should be in this group? So if this is null, then it's an empty group. Otherwise, you have to specify one of this. Either it's a source volume group snapshot name. So that means you take create a volume group from this group snapshot, or we have the selector, that means we're going to get all the existing PVCs and add them to the volume group. So that's for the init. So in this way, in this case, we can, after it's initialized, we can still modify the group. And okay, so group status will have, so we'll have a,
sorry, can you go back to that init group?
Okay, sure.
So the idea is we want to allow for selection of a large number of PVCs possibly. Instead of having to go and manually update each one of those PVCs, you want to be able to auto select them.
Right.
And so you specify some subset or some label selector that says, any PVC that has such and such label, put it into this volume group.
Right.
And to get around the weirdness of, mutation, you're saying this will only be evaluated once at creation time, and hence the name init source. I guess the weirdness that remains is we have a volume group in the spec of the PVC. If you select using this mechanism, does that remain empty?
I'm sorry, which one?
I thought there was a way on the PVC to opt into a volume group, like a field in the PVC that says I want to.
Right. That's modified, right? You can also, that's the mutation part, right? So we're talking about, so does not matter how, okay. So like, let's just look at this part, right? So let's say you can create an empty volume group, right? Don't have anything. In that case, we will allow you to add new PVCs by modifying the PVC spec to add a volume group name, right? You can do. In addition, if you use this init source, you can create a volume group with, this basically one of these ways, right? So basically, you populate your volume group with something. Either you create a volume group from the group snapshot. That means you actually create this volume group and also kind of in the same time you create new volumes added to the group in one step, right? So that's one init source that we said last time. We said we want to support this, right? In that case, after that, you can still modify the PVC spec and add the new volumes to it, right? We shouldn't be disallowing
right.
that.
So I think that's fine. My question is more around, let's say in your label, you say anything that has a label foo, and you have volume A, B, and C that have the label foo. And so you create this new volume group. Volume group status says, okay, now A, B, and C are part of this volume group. A, B, and C also have a volume group name in the spec, I presume. Is that accurate?
So in this case, no, right? So that will be part of the controller will have to modify that.
And so that's where it gets weird, right?
So you're saying like the controller will have to kind of like decide what to act on, what not to act on?
It's a UX thing, right? We're saying that there is a field in the spec in the PVC that says, this is the intended volume group that it should, or set of volume groups it should belong to. But it is possible that it can be empty and you can still belong to a volume group unbeknownst to that PVC object.
But that's like the controller, so basically it's like you're requesting it through I see what you're saying. So this is ways you're requesting this through a volume group spec, right? And our controller will making that change on behalf of the user. I think that would be something like that.
You will add a label to a
no, I will not. No, label is added by user. No, label is added by user, right? So that's same thing as how label is usually used, that we are not changing. So if you added the label on those PVCs, then we will allow that to be selected and added. So basically we do that work for you, basically.
Okay, if I change my PVC, say, add myself into a One Group, to a One Group, but I don't have the selector. I don't have the label selector. What happens?
You can also do that. Yes, that is also
Then,
possible.
okay, then your init source is rather a fixed, a not fixed kind of source.
Well, init source is,
no.
I guess the intention is it's only evaluated once at creation time. And that's fine. I think that's just to get around the fact that it gets weird if you continuously evaluate it, right? So,
Yeah, so we
I think
don't continuously evaluate that.
right.
Only,
So you fix it at only creation time. I
Mhm.
think the weirdness that I see here is you basically have two sources of truth, essentially, of what the volume group should be made up of. You've got that init source, and then you have the PVCs themselves. So if you choose to specify via init source what the volume group makeup should be, the PVCs themselves are going to have an empty volume group name. And that just is a confusing UI, right? As a user, I can have a PVC that can be part of a group that, there's it has an empty volume group name.
So I'm not
So
sure I agree, right? This init source is not fixed, because in the selector mode, if I add a label later on, the controller will still try to add a new PVC into this group.
No, it's only going to be evaluated once at creation time, right? So when the volume group is created, the controller one time runs an evaluation to say what are the PVCs that match, and then it will go ahead and add that set. If you add a new PVC with that label in the future, it is not automatically going to get added.
We have the same problem with the container nullifier.
Right, yeah, I know. But here we are since we're calling this init source, so okay. So now does it make sense? So I was thinking that the controller will go ahead. In this case, controller will actually go ahead and add that volume group name in the spec. Does that make sense, or is that wrong? Sav, is that allowed?
It gets kind of weird when you start modifying the spec, because that's the intended desired state for the user.
Okay.
Normally, it should only modify the status. I was thinking if we want to support this use case, we don't have to put it into the volume group spec.
Okay.
What we can do is, keep volume group spec simple and say, the only way that you add to a volume group is through having a PVC object that has a volume group list that includes the volume group. And to reduce the overhead of like manually having to go and update a ton of different groups, you could create a new object and controller that does the automation for you.
Oh, okay.
Right. And then it would go in and like either create or update the correct fields in all the selected group. And that way you kind of create like clean abstraction lines. At a very basic level, it's a very manual process. And if you want to automate it, you can have a second level controller that does automation on top of it.
Okay, so there will be like another. Okay, so let's be have another CRD maybe just
right.
Okay, sure. I think that makes sense. Yeah. So we can maybe add that one like a second step or something, but at least we can list that here. So that, because I think people will be asking this.
It still doesn't answer your concern, right? That even though you have a separate CRD, the controller, then the controller will end up need to modify.
Yeah. And so for that controller, we're going to need to decide whether it only provisions new PVCs or it can modify existing PVCs. And we can decide with that controller later. Okay. Basically punt on this problem for now.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably better. Yeah. Okay. So move on to group status. Okay. So group status will have a volume group ID. So this is the thing that I was actually trying to bring up. So right now, right, we only have this like one object model. We don't have this like like two objects you have to bind or something, because I was thinking, trying to simplify things, having one rather than two. And also if we really want to like import some existing group, I think we can actually do that just by importing one PVC at a time. I was thinking, that's what I'm thinking. So simplify things. So that's why. So basically in this volume group, we will have this volume group ID, which is returned by the CSI driver. If some CSI driver, some system does not really have this group concept, actually, well, they can take a group snapshot, but they don't really have this a group ahead of time, basically. Then in that case, they can just choose to return the volume group name that we provided to the driver. So,
in the case of creating from volume group snapshot, will the PVC list be populated?
Yeah, yes, in that case, it will be new, right? So that's, in this case, will be populated. We're going to create new PVCs with the snapshot as source. So
where do you get this PVC specs from?
PVC spec, it should be in the, so that will be in the, so the group snapshot. Okay, so we need to go look at the group snapshot. We haven't got this group snapshot yet, but the group snapshot will have the information.
Yes. I guess the fundamental question is,
the group snapshot will have a list of snapshots. So this one would have a list of snapshots, basically.
Sure, but the snapshots only has the snapshot content, has snapshots. It doesn't contain the looking forward to create PVC information, right? For example, the names of the PVCs. You're going to use the original names of the PVCs.
So those are the things that we can actually I don't think that actually is, I don't think that, yeah, we probably, so we can just create we can just generate them. I'm not sure if that is important for user to provide those names. Yeah, if it's important for user to provide names, then I don't think, yeah, that's right. I don't think we have, but we should actually have that information.
It sounds like we're trying to do two different types of groups, right? One is volume group and the other is a snapshot group.
That's right. It seems a little bit, weird to me in the sense it combines both, try to combine both functionality. However,
we're not really trying to combine, but that's basically, so, okay. So there are actually two ways for the restore to work, right? So one way is, well, it's straightforward. Initially, that was the way that we proposed. Just you can only restore one at a time. So okay, so let's actually go to here, restore. We haven't even looked at snapshot yet. Okay, so the restore. Initially, we talked about like two ways, but we only support one, the first one, which is the simple one. You create an empty volume group, and then you create a new volume. From a snapshot one by one, add into the volume group. That was initially the thing we're saying we want to support that one. So definitely this was to be supported. But then I think during the previous review, there are some concerns saying, okay, if you only support this, then it's not going to be useful for some storage system at all. So then we talked about just, we want to support this one. That's why we're talking about this. You just do this everything in one step. So basically we need to be able to compose that. So I think I can maybe write down more details on how this one is done. So the group, so group snapshot should have all the information so that when you are creating so between the volume group and the volume group snapshot between the two, you should actually be able to get back to where you want to be at the restore time.
So sorry, volume group snapshot is a different type than volume group?
Yeah, one group snapshot is a snapshot, right? So it's actually okay. So that's we have to have not even get to that part yet. So we talked about the one group, right? And then we haven't talked about group snapshot. Group snapshot is like this. Group snapshot, you must specify a source. When you take a group snapshot, you must specify source. A source is a one group. Right, so because we want to be able to take a snapshot of multiple volumes in one shot, right? To support consistent volume group, to support consistent group snapshot. So we have to be able to take one source, which is the volume group, and then create a snapshot. So this is this is the different another CRD that we have to support a consistent group snapshot. Yeah, so that's and then in this case, you would have a source like this.
What can you do with a CG snapshot?
Which one?
Or what can you do with a group snapshot?
What can you do with group snapshot? You
restore it to a new group, or do you have
right.
a bunch of individual snapshots that you can restore to PVCs and then turn those PVCs into a group? Or like, how does that work?
No, so you group snapshot, you use that to create a one group from snapshot, right? So that's the reason you want that.
But does the group snapshot, is it comprised of lots of little volume snapshots that you can individually access?
Yeah, it does. So we actually the group snapshot status, we actually would have a snapshot list basically.
Okay, so I could restore just one snapshot out of
yeah, that's another capability we are trying to add, which is to support individual restore. So in some use cases, and there are some review comments saying, oh, maybe some people can only have to do that. So we actually
why
added that.
Do you need that? The volume snapshot already does that.
Right. I'm just saying like
it's a separate capability. Not every one can support that.
Do you get the volume snapshot object or not? Because if the object is created, then you can obviously use it. But one could imagine a design where you don't get a volume snapshot object and you just get the group snapshot.
Right. So that's why it's a capability. So we have that as a capability. You can actually restore one.
No. Ben's question is that can an end user see these volume snapshot objects or not? Or is that hidden?
I think we should actually have them visible, because we are actually, so when we are taking steps, so they're actually we are actually getting close to the time. So we actually talked about how to create the group snapshot. When you create snapshot, there are two different cases when you create a group snapshot. It depends on the driver, depends on the storage system. So some storage systems, of course, they can create a group snapshot on a storage system. And then in this case, actually, you would want to leave it to the CSV driver. CSV driver's create volume group volume group snapshot function to handle the individual snapshot creation. But for others, you actually have to do them individually. So in that case, the driver will actually have to use the create snapshot function to create snapshot. So it's like there are two ways to handle this based on the driver's capability. But in either case, we will need to construct our group snapshot. Controller will have to be able to construct all the objects, the individual objects as well.
And then, like, the follow-on question is, if you have the individual objects, can you delete them individually?
Yeah, so those are you should not be able to. You can't. So for the snapshots, you actually should not be able to delete them individually.
So what does that look like at the Kubernetes API? Like I delete the object and it's just stuck.
So probably will need to add the admissions control to prevent that. So
well, you could do it with the finalizer. It's just going to be weird because you'll you'll ask the system
Yeah,
to
I found
delete
that
it,
it's weird too. And
and it will just sort of sit there until you delete the group snapshot. And then
the
the other question is,
you definitely
it-
cannot delete. If you delete that, then you destroyed your consistency group, right? Group snapshot, basically.
not necessarily. I mean, it
Oh.
depends on the design. Like I would wonder, like if the output of taking a group snapshot is both the group snapshot object and a bunch of little snapshots, when I
Yes,
clean
it
it
is.
up,
That's current design. Yes.
is the reverse true? Like I delete the group snapshot object and all my other snapshots just vaporize as a side effect of that?
That's true. Yeah. That's the design, current design. If you think that's not the right, then we can talk about it. I think that should be the design, because group snapshot is supposed to be like one thing. It's different from voting, right? Voting makes sense for you to delete individual ones, but for snapshot is different, right? We want to support a consistent group snapshot. It doesn't make sense. You delete one, then you cannot really use it anymore. But the reason we keep the individual one is, sometimes you want to be able to just restore that one snapshot. There are use cases for that.
What happens if you delete one?
What is
Sorry, go ahead,
interesting?
Sean.
Yeah, so what is interesting is that we in the API, adding and removing PVC is allowed for volume groups. But in
That's
volume,
different. Yeah, snapshot is totally different. Snapshot, you absolutely cannot allow that.
sure. Then in the restoration case, if that's the case, right?
Mhm.
If I select a volume group snapshot, which happens to consist one of my already removed volume, then I, as a user, will see this volume all of a sudden pop up, right?
I'm sorry, I was writing the setting. Can you repeat?
T1, I have PVC1, PVC2.
Okay.
T2, I take a snapshot. T3, I remove PVC2. T4, I restore using the snapshot. Then I end up with two PVCs, P1 and P2.
Correct, because then you have a different group, right? You're creating a new group. We're not rewriting the original one. Yes, that is possible. Oh, you're saying you're modified the group. Yes, yes. So the results of the snapshot, of course, depending on your volume group, like how many volumes are there, right, at the time. So, hey, sorry, I think this is a great discussion, but I think we are running out of time. I think I'll schedule a follow-up meeting. So, okay, that is true. So the snapshot, group snapshot, depending on the moment when you take it, how many volumes are there, that's what you get. It's not necessarily the same as how it started with. Definitely, that's the case. But you have the PVC list, right, in that group, right? So hopefully because that's in the status. Okay, so so I think we will need to have another meeting to continue. 1 minute to go. Thanks for this. So Tom, do you want to give a quick update of the white paper?
No update yet.
Okay.
I haven't made progress since last meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think are we set for kind of doing the final draft and then putting things together?
I think we're not yet, because I think I was asking you because I think that section definitely needs some work, because that section right now it's a little bit hard to understand. I mean, we have many use cases, but it's but as part of the white paper, I think that definitely needs some work. That's why I was asking you.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah, sure. I think we still need some. I'm sorry.
I did have a high-level question on the white paper as well.
Mm-hmm.
In some sections, we're kind of proposing new Kubernetes APIs, right? I'm thinking CBT. Do we want to separate out the proposals from the actual kind of?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, so the white paper, I don't think that should include the caps, but we just mainly just talk about the problems, what problem we're trying to solve, right? And then we can have a link to a cap or something. Yeah, I think that.
We discuss the problem, we discuss potential solutions or currently in the industry solutions, and that's all. Because otherwise this thing is gonna be, I don't know, 1,000-page long or something.
I know, yeah, it's already very long. That's very, yeah, we definitely need to take a look and trying to trim it. But I mean, so I was just right now, I'm looking at different sections and see which section seems like need some rework. So I think the quiet section definitely needs some rework. So yeah, maybe we could, maybe we could you could give an update next time.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, thank you. So I see that Stephen Nanley is here. So that section, I wonder if you can take a look, because that one, the section that you did for the use cases, that's actually very, very good. But it has a lot of like bullets points.
I'm going to turn it
can
into
you-
paragraphs.
I'm sorry?
Shing, we
Turn it
can
into paragraphs.
I'm sorry, what?
I was saying, it sounds like you want me to turn the bullet points into paragraphs.
Oh yeah, yes. Actually,
Okay.
can you take a look of the, yeah, so I assigned that, oh, did I assign? Maybe I should. Okay, let me assign that section to you, because the rest of the paper will be like the paragraphs, right? So can you?
No problem.
Okay.
No problem. Unless it makes Tom's life easier. If it makes Tom's life easier, then no, I'm just kidding.
But Tom is working on a different section though.
Okay, well then, yeah, then I'll do it.
Your section's use cases, right? So I was just looking at this
Yeah.
two section. I think
You bet.
probably need to, yeah, do some
No
more
problem.
work there.
Yeah, just assign it to me and I'll go through it.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Shing.
Yeah, all right. I think we over time. All right, thanks everyone. We will meet again in 2 weeks.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.